Marie, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
So glad that you are able to come down here to the region and have this conversation with us, to our members, to our fans, to really explain kind of your side of volleyball, where you came from, what you're doing currently. Just give us a little bit of a gist of where you're at and what you're doing and the love of the game.
Sure. So I appreciate you having me on. I'm headed into my ninth year as head coach at DePaul University. DePaul competes in the Big East Conference, and that is part of Division One women's volleyball.
You guys had a pretty outstanding year. I mean, you guys had a really good year last year. You want to any recaps how that season ended and how you're looking forward to bumping into this next season upcoming, next year?
When I took over in 2018, people may or may not know this, but my mother was a longtime club director in Chicago, and she played for the first girls volleyball club in Chicago
That's
called
awesome.
Windy City Volleyball Club out of Queen of Martyrs Elementary School on the South Side. And so I'm a South Side gal. We're a South Side family. Grew up, born and raised down there in Evergreen Park, in Mount Greenwood and Beverly, that area, Oaklawn. And when she grew up playing, it was really the first iteration right around that Title IX era. And after she finished her youth career, she had an opportunity to play at St. Francis. And this was back in the day where everybody was in the same division. So it was like St. Francis, Michigan State, UCLA, all women in that first iteration of Title IX. And after she came back, she took over the club for John Chordanik, who started it. And so I grew up, I'm a club director's kid, a gym rat, all those things. And a lot of people worked with and for my mom and growing up, and she became one of the top clubs in the country. Windy City became one of the top and, one of the first ever, right? So there's a handful of those nationwide. So after she finished playing, she took it over and it kind of grew. And a lot of her top players, who were my babysitters, ended up being all Americans at DePaul or Loyola. A lot of the Chicago volleyball schools, if they didn't go out, right? So she had players, obviously. Eunice Thomas was an All American at Kentucky. I think still one of the best players ever to play. She had players go nationally for the next iteration, the 80s and 90s, but quite a few of them ended up at DePaul. And so when I had the opportunity to come back and take over as a head coach, it was a really amazing professional opportunity, but also an amazing personal opportunity for the cycle of volleyball to kind of come back around. And the program had hit a little bit of an ebb. So DePaul's history, it was transitioning from Conference USA in 2005 over to the Big East, which was a phenomenal move. Obviously, we see how strong the Big East Conference is for many sports. And just a really smart move by our athletic director, Jeannie Lenti Ponsetto, who actually was the athletic director that hired me. But the program had, some work to do in terms of catching up to where the league was at strength-wise. And so the challenge for me was it was to reorganize it in a way that could elevate the level of competitiveness relative to where the game had grown for women's sports. And it continues to grow, right? We talk about that women's sports is having a movement, not only a moment. And so, when that challenge came about, the program was in need of a little bit of reorganization and adjustment to where the program could be, where the floor was. Because in the 90s, I mean, I remember, they were winning championships, going to NCAA, and that was a tall task. I mean, we had fallen off a little bit. The program was 285th in the country and dead last in the Big East. And so only where to go but up, right? So first time head coach took it over in 2018. And every year we have elevated and raised the floor and had great teammateship and great commitment with our athletic department to do that, and our university, because we still want to be who we are as a university, and we
For
don't want
sure.
to lose our values, our Vincentian mission and our values. And so over the course of the past 8 years, we've gone from 285th to 185, 185 to 143, 143 to 115, 115 to top 60, and we've hovered around that 75 to 95 range for the past couple years. This past year was a little bit of a retool, not totally a rebuild. We still were just inside that 140 mark, but we really, did our part to move the program floor up from that national ranking. We also moved up in league. Our goal, where we believe this program can be, is we believe we can compete nationally, and we can be hosting one of those first and second rounds in the NCAA, which means you have to be top 16 in the country. We believe that that's where this program can grow to be. Just as Marquette has shown it can do it, and Creighton has shown it can do it. And the Big East is just a phenomenal league where teams can go from an ebb to a flow. They can go from the bottom to the top. And that's been the challenge. And so over the past 8 years, we've achieved realignment to the point where now we're entering our championship chasing phase. And so 4 out of the past 6 seasons, we've had winning seasons. 3 out of the past 5 years, we've been to the Big East tournament. We have finished third in the Big East. And the Big East has jumped from a 12th ranked conference nationally out of 31 to a top 5 ranked conference nationally out of 31. So as we have elevated the floor, so too has the conference aligned itself to elevate the floor to make sure that we can compete nationally. And so it's been that's the surface level, but it has been such an incredible opportunity, and I owe everything to Jeannie Lenti-Bonsetto, who took a chance on me at bringing me home. I was an assistant coach out at University of San Diego. I loved it. Jennifer Petrie, I mean, they just made it to a Final Four a couple years ago, and she's had that program rolling. I think they've made like 26 NCAA tournaments since she took over back in '99. But I had a great time there. But when the opportunity came and Jeannie called me, it was just, it was destiny, that I could come back and have the responsibility to get this program to the level where it can be, an example of the standard of what Chicago volleyball can be, in the apex and the tip of the sword. Because this still is, I would argue, the strongest region of depth and organization and talent in the country, and also the blue collar mindset. It's both of those things together. Whereas maybe some other regions have a lot of talent, but there's just something about the blue collar attitude of this region that still goes. I'm 41 now. I remember when I was in the gym when I was 5, and the people and the coaches and just the region itself and everybody that grew this thing from nothing. And now it continues to be a heavy hitter on the volleyball landscape. And I just couldn't be more proud of having the responsibility to hold that and drive forward the program.
Going into DePaul, right, your first year, you mentioned that you had you were at San Diego, you were an assistant at DePaul, you were an assistant at Oregon. You get into DePaul, head coach, what's the very first thing that's in your mind that's like, this is what I have to do? This is either whether it's change or whether it's, your own thing. What was that first thing that you were like, I get to DePaul, this is what has to get done right now?
Get in the gym with the players. Whenever you're hired by an athletic director right now in college, you really have 2 years to show progress. And you need those 2 years to show progress because you need the recruits for the future 4 years to say yes to you, right? In most jobs in collegiate athletics, and I'll speak for DePaul specifically, I do not have a job where I go in and I clean house and I ruin all these lives. These lives who committed to DePaul and are matriculating in their undergraduate degrees. And I mean, it was my responsibility first and foremost to see those athletes whom I did not recruit, but I had a responsibility to, was to grow their game and see them through to graduation and stand by their commitment to the university. But we did have to change some systems. I have certain systems and certain ways that I like to train, as any coach does. So it wasn't necessarily my way or the highway. It was more so, hey, let's partner and think about and understand we're going to do some things differently in the gym. And I focused on that first because the players were so thirsty for improvement. These were players who are, your straight A students in the classroom, your community service leaders, your camp coaches, for kids. These are people, these are high performers. And so they were so thirsty to get back into the gym and put some more W's in that win column. And a W for us, our first year was, could we get to 20 points? Could we get this match to 4 sets? Could we get, our kill percentages and all of our efficiencies up? That was the wins in 2018. And then in 2019, we finished close to 500. I believe we were 14 and 16 that year. And put some more W's in the W column. So then in 2020 and 2021, we could start to put more in and kind of stack on those opportunities. But it was getting in the gym, it was getting the girls and the players realigned with the volleyball systems that were going to allow them to chase higher levels of success.
Going from assistant to head coach, was there anything that you were worried about? I know you've been in the game for so long before that, right? But there is that like another level of pressure, or, you know, whether it's from the athletic director or the athletic department or yourself as a player, maybe the mentors that, you know, coached you up to be the coach that you are. Was there any of that?
No, I've never shied away from pressure. In fact, that all the roles that I've taken on the staffs that I've been on, I've just been saying, I just said, yes, give me more responsibility. What do you need me to do? Okay, you need me to fix the printer. I can do that.
A getter.
I can fix any printer in the country, by the way, but that's not what I want anybody to take away in this podcast is the only thing. But yeah, a go-getter, just what needs to be done. I will figure out how to do it. And I said yes to almost everything, well, literally everything, because even if I didn't have any experience. And so Oregon State's a good example. When I took that job, I had a lot of court experience. I had just come off a stint in Finland with the men's national program. I also worked as a sport physiologist out there. That's my background, is sport physiology. And I had the opportunity to train under some of the top overhead trainers in the world of how they do workouts and program people and go through mechanics. I mean, we're talking exercise testing, biomechanics. I had a chance to work with Lewis Hamilton before he became really big in the Formula One circuit. I had a chance to design his workouts. I was just exposed to training methodologies around the world that elite level athletes were using to, improve their performance.
You had some good people in your corner.
I did, but I worked really hard. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no exaggeration that I put in 20-hour days for about 20 years of my life for that growth phase, because you have to, because you're not good at your systems yet. You're learning a ton of things. And so I just took on an enormous amount of work to start to refine and learn my own systems and styles that stick with me now. And so, going from assistant to head, there's nothing on my staff responsibility list for anybody on it that I have not done, and that I do not understand how long it takes to do, right? So there's a deep appreciation for the breadth of work that it takes to run a high level Division I program. And I will never ask anybody to do anything that I have not done and I don't have experience with. And so I take a lot of pride in that. But when you go from the assistant to the head job, I'm sure you're sensing a theme here. When you're an assistant, your job is to manage and execute a lot of tasks. Mm-hmm. You're managing recruitment tasks. You're managing your responsibility is for the bulk of the work. You are the engine in the car. When you go from assistant to head, your job now is to drive the car. And when you switch, man, it happens overnight. You go from one seat to the other side of the table. And that seat has a lot more to do with managing people in addition to managing tasks. And so that's something that you can't get that experience of being in charge, how everybody fits within your system, until you're in charge of it, right? So like, let's say I'm an assistant and I had to manage the manager. Great, you managed one person. Mm-hmm. But when you're a head coach, you are responsible for setting the tone and managing everybody. And people are messy and people have different working styles. And you have to learn how to drive stick shift with, in an abstract term, you have to drive stick shift in how you manage. And when do you kind of hold your ground, and when are you firm on something and firm on a standard versus when are you trying to listen to what the person's trying to tell you and change something. And that's very hard for a first-time head coach to do, because there's an ego involved and you're trying to prove yourself to your athletic director. You're trying to prove yourself to your recruitment base. You're trying to prove yourself to your own players. And so there's an awful lot of responsibility on coming in and going, I'm presenting certainty. Here's my plan. Here's why everyone should buy in. And it's your responsibility to hold that plan up and keep air in that balloon. But also manage, people's questions and maybe stubbornness to change. And I struggled with that. It took me a long time. It probably took me 4 years before I really understood how to balance keeping air in the balloon and driving the program forward and managing the people under me. And I wouldn't say, I think people learn a little bit more every year, but I'm so good at just the grunt work. I'm so good at working. I really had to learn how to manage people in the narrative better, because I have the narrative, I have the vision, I have the roadmap, I have the narrative. I know progress is never linear. I'm very adaptive. But what I had to learn the most was, how do I put the people into it, and how do I manage, you know, people and teams. And I have a team. I'm going to have a team this fall of 18 players. I have 18 players. I have 2 staff members. I have an athletic trainer. I have a strength coach. I have an academic advisor. I have a nutritionist. I have a sports marketing person, a sports supervisor. I have a ticketing office. I have a lot of people that I have to align with what I call the hub of the wheel, which is the volleyball program. And so coming up with a system that puts everybody as a spoke into that hub and empowers them to put their twist within my program. Learning how to do all of that. I mean, I'm just starting to scratch the surface at what we're doing here at DePaul, and I'm heading into year 9. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but it's a big adjustment. The other adjustment is, and this will be shorter, I promise, but there's a very different way that players treat you when you have the assistant title and the head coach's title. And it's the title, it's not the person. I'm the same person I was when I was an assistant. I'm smarter and I make less mistakes. But when you go from an assistant coach to a head coach title, there is a level of messaging that the players receive about that role. Players aren't gonna, they're gonna sit up a little straighter around you in every notion of that phrase. They're not going to expand or be as vulnerable in answers with you. And I had spent 11 years, I've still been an assistant longer than I've been a head coach. And I have spent 11 years in that type of relationship where the players were a little bit more relaxed. You could get to the point a little sooner. You could be a little bit more direct because they didn't, they were like, oh, she's just trying to help, and really as a head coach, it's different. And it took me a while to get okay with that.
That is such a good perspective. That is such a good, like you said, I love that analogy of keeping air in the balloon. Like that is, and everything you said, being in that role before as an assistant, like I exactly know what you're saying, and I think that's also used in multiple, like, not even collegiate volleyball, but like youth volleyball and probably in the Olympic team. And you had an opportunity of coaching the U23 team this past summer, so I probably happened there too. But that is such a good way of putting that. When you were younger, 18, out of high school, did you picture yourself in this type of role?
I think everybody else did. I think literally everyone else is like, duh, of course.
Yeah.
We knew this from, when you entered in, even as a freshman in college, we knew you were going to be a coach, and we knew you were going to be in a leadership role and an impactful role and these things. I didn't know it only because I had opportunities, like I mentioned before, on the sport physiology side. I was really into that. And I got into it because I was very passionate about solving the ACL problem in women's sports, right? ACLs and really the non-contact injury problem, which actually has grown also with men most recently. But I really wanted to go down that route at injury prevention. And because sports for me it's the place, the gym is where I feel most in love with that version of myself. You have the version of yourself you're like, or could be that friend that you're around or that person you're around that they just bring the best version of you that you love the most out. And the gym for me is that space. So I knew I always wanted to be involved in exercise, in injury prevention, and in the gym space. And I had opportunity. I had a lot of opportunities to go down the academia route, to do research in that space. I had an opportunity to be a sport performance coach with strength and conditioning. I'm an active CSCS. I have my active CSCS certification, so I could have done that. But I always found myself trying to get back to the volleyball gym. And so I just decided to go to door number 3 and see where it led. And I said yes to an opportunity. I had applied to 2 graduate schools, University of Utah for public health and then Oregon State for sports medicine. And Oregon State, Terry Leskevich, our longtime national team coach, in Chicago, Ukrainian village guy. He was the head coach there at Oregon State, and I thought, wow, and he offered me the opportunity. So it's funny, I was coaching for Celtic Force at the time down the south side in old Payless Courts.
Yep.
R.I.P. Payless
Yeah,
Courts.
not there anymore.
I know, R.I.P. But he was coming to visit. I was coaching a 17-1 team. I just got back from Finland for my overseas tour, and he was coming to watch me do a practice, and it was like kind of an interview, for his graduate assistant spot for Oregon State. And this was in the Pac-10, back in the old Pac-10 in 2000, the mid 2000s, which I would argue is still the top 10-year stint of a conference of volleyball ever. I mean, it was the Pac-10 in the 2000s was a bloodbath. So it was an opportunity to go work in the Pac-10 for Terry, former national team coach, Chicago guy, like, what? All my worlds are colliding. And I told my club team, I go, hey, I know you probably don't know who Terry Leskevich is, but he's coming to practice. Here's who he is. Like, don't screw this up for me, like, we're going to do drills that you all know, work hard, be organized, don't goof off, it was funny, and they crushed it. And Terry's like, yeah, you ran a good practice, I'll offer you the position. So yeah,
that is such like humbling and just
pretty
like
funny.
a good moment to know. Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Like I feel everyone or anyone that is successful, like you mentioned earlier, like is from our area.
Yeah.
Like we have such a cool and an amazing hub of Chicago coaches and athletes, and like it's just so incredible. And it's awesome that like I've never even heard that as a graduate student, like for him to come down to see a practice. Yeah.
He flew out.
That's
I'm sure he
insane.
also saw his sister still lives here. I'm sure he also saw some family, but he flew out
Yeah.
and he watched my whole 2-hour training. This is a bronze medalist, 92 Olympics, bronze medalist head coach, and really one of the architects of our women's national team, and long time, obviously his success at Pacific, and he started the men's program at Ohio State. Right, you're talking about a volleyball legend. Sat in my 17-1s practice in the back corner of Payless Courts for 2 hours and reviewed my skills, and he said, hey, you're hired. So
And it's probably funny that like the girls, like you said, probably had no clue who that was. They didn't know how important that figure was within our space.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You played in Chicago too, right? NIU. How was that transition, right, from being an athlete and then going into a leadership role in coaching or in physiology that you said? How did that translate? Was there times where, like, do you think because of like, of course players become coaches, but how did your playing specifically mold you into your coaching mold?
Sure. Well, I'll use two things. So when I was a youth player, when I was a high school player, you really you started to understand the iterations of a club season calendar, and you also understand the high school season calendar. And I became very good. I had very intimate knowledge with how the certain times of those calendars you were expanding more workload. Right, there was a qualifier season. In high school, there was some like preseason stuff. You would play for multiple days, maybe have multiple matches in a weekend before you got to your like Thursday, Saturday, gym high school cycle. And I just got really good at managing the calendar. I was also a multi-sport athlete, which I know is a dying breed.
Yeah, there's not many of those anymore.
Not many of those, but also really learning the ins and outs of managing multi-sport athletes. And I played volleyball, basketball, softball, and ice hockey. And just really finding deep appreciation for the different things that those sports taught me. Also, I had a different role on every one of those teams. On my high school volleyball team, I was one of the better players. On my club team, I was part of very good players. On the basketball team, I was a role player. My job was to create steals and pass it to somebody that could shoot. I can't shoot, so I wasn't the best player. In softball, I was middle third of the lineup, and my job was to get on base and small ball and steal bases. I was not your cleanup hitter. But in volleyball, I was one of the best, right? And in ice hockey, I sucked relative to the competition I was playing. I was at the bottom. I was probably the worst player. on my team. And I also played with boys who were, played more hockey than I had, but I was using it as a cross training activity. And also I loved it. I had a lot of fun. So I think the two things, one, understanding how to manage a calendar of a multi-sport athlete with school responsibilities on top of it, managing it over a year, you really understand responsibility and you understand time management. That was the biggest piece. And two, really playing on different teams, I had different roles on different teams. And so I had to learn how to fit into different teams and relate to different teams and find value in those different roles. And I think that set me up for a really balanced and really fulfilling college career in Northern Illinois. And I think it's really set me up well in life to be anything on a staff. I can be the person that has to direct a meeting. I can just as much happily be the person taking notes in the meeting, and if asked, provide observations. So it's allowed me to appreciate those roles.
You mentioning you're a part of, you're from the top to almost the very bottom and everything in between. Going into, as a head coach of a collegiate program, do you think that benefits you in like how to speak to athletes like appropriately because you can relate to them? You're more eye level with what their needs are and how they play and what they need exactly from you, from the playing time or whatever the case may be.
It certainly helps me understand what they're feeling, and I can get to a space where I can sit with them and go, I get it. It's, you want more than maybe your number doesn't get called in a match at all. You truly are the third or the fourth on the depth chart. And for your number to get called, you might need one person to have a bad game and another person to get injured, right? I can certainly appreciate being in those situations, but still finding value and working hard and being part of the team and being ready to go, building those mental skills. I've also been in a position where all the responsibility is on me. I mean, I was a setter, and for my club team, I was the main setter. And so the responsibility of win-loss was on me, and it was on my ability to drive sets and matches. And so I think it gives me the opportunity to understand what that athlete's feeling, which I feel like is first and foremost the most important thing before you try to help them evolve from that place and maybe equip them with tools of how they can make the most out of that situation and then how they can find value in that situation that can serve them long term.
You kind of touched on the mental side, right? For your culture at DePaul, right? How much do you guys address like that mental side? Like Texas A&M just won the national title, and Jamie preached about like having the girls and the women in the correct headspace, like not in the short term, but just also in the long term. Um, what's kind of some of the things that you present in your gym to your athletes, or maybe some advice that you would give to a youth kid that that can benefit them?
I think it's important to frame how people think about training mentality, and also training emotional response. Sports is a highly pressurized atmosphere. It's a performance-based industry. And so there are a lot of emotions that come in just being human. And we talk about in our gym, we talk about approaching and evolving and being aware of the mental and the emotional just as much as we're trying to work on the physical. So we really try to frame it in a way to make it equal, in terms of just awareness and importance. And then we frame it in a way where we tell our athletes, hey, I know you're trying to work on this type of attack or shot. I know setters, you might be trying to work on this set tempo or location. Passers, you're working on that. Whatever it is that you're working on physically, let's now make those same things mentally to train mentality. Now let's make a bucket of those things per player. Let's help you set some goals with your emotions, right? And all of it. So I teach more awareness first, and then once that awareness and appreciation has been achieved, that's when I think you can work in moment. For example, right now, DePaul's on the quarter system, and we're in week 7 of winter quarter. And when you've been lifting and conditioning and training for 7 straight weeks, the novelty is off. You are in the guts of athlete
Mm-hmm.
development. You are in the trenches, right? Club, it's your April month when you get done with qualifier season and maybe you're into May, and you're just in the guts of we're practicing, but we're waiting for nationals coming
Mm-hmm.
maybe at the end of June, right? And it's you have to first off be aware, because you can't get in situations where the sense of urgency to perform dips. You always have to be pushing performance and performance upgrades, but you also have to understand that you're not always going to be 100% every day, but that doesn't mean you can't give 100% every day and be present and in the moment with your teammates. And so we just frame it. We talk about it all the time, every practice, and we talk about, like, for example, so this is week 7. We're saying, hey, this is a mini October. This is October in the fall for women's volleyball, right? It's a transition month. Although we have 10 matches out of our 16 Big East matches are in October. You're going to be playing in November, December if you win October. If you don't win October, you are sitting at home by Thanksgiving in our league. So we talk about the importance of learning to perform independent of circumstance, and in order to do that, you have to train to be in a good headspace. You have to train to be able to handle moments, right? And so we talk about that. We talk about it every day.
Being a part of the game too, like the first thing, especially with youth volleyball, when I used to coach, was you talk about identification, right? Where's the ball going? How can we beat it there, et cetera, et cetera. And I always used to use that analogy, like mentally too, like identify what's happening, because that's how you can help yourself, get past whatever mental hump you have into that thing. And I feel like that kind of plays on that same level. Now, you had an amazing opportunity. I mean, you were in Finland and you already saw some international play, but coaching the U23 team last year, are there things that you saw on the national scale from either a coach or from a team, that whether it's the kids here that play in the States or maybe just as like a team as a whole or individually, that you saw that you liked, that you might like, oh, I like that, I'll put that in my toolkit a little bit?
Yeah, I think it starts with this idea that the game can be played differently. And right now, our NCAA Division One system, it is so powerful. It is so strong. It's a very physical game. But if you go overseas and you don't have that level of physicality and height, there are still teams that, for example, our semifinal against Mexico. You would watch hitting lines and just be like, wow, USA is gonna take this team, fairly easily. But then you watch how Mexico plays and how they played, and they have no problem building rallies, extending rallies, using hands, playing the smart game. Some people would call it playing with a high IQ. And there's, if you tune on, anytime we play Japan, I'm always like, oh, this is gonna go 5, because their ball control, they're so precise. Are they the most physical at the net? No. Do we oftentimes win the blocking matchup? Yes. But the game can be played differently. And sometimes I worry in the States with our youth, because with girls, it's, and of course with guys, but I'll speak from the girls' perspective. There's this comparison of, oh, I can't jump that high, I'll never play at that level, or I can't do that, I don't look like that. And the notion of it is there are countries playing the game differently around the entire world. And if you could just, if our youth players could just appreciate how they play more, and of course you want to steal things from players. You should always watch players and be like, wow, I like what she did there, he did there, I'm going to try that in my game. That's growth. But I want our youth and our players here to get away from this copy and paste, right? It's okay to have idols and people you look up to, and maybe you want to steal some things from. But you also have to find out, what kind of game do you have? What kind of game do you play? And lean into that, and be one of one. Don't try to be, one of somebody else. Don't try to be somebody else. Be the best version of yourself and find the game that you want to play. And that's the biggest thing when you leave this country that I learned with my first experience in Finland. And I was coaching on the men's side. That was the men's national team. So it was not only a different country, it was also a different gender that I had been exposed to. And it was a different game. And so I had to learn, like, oh, why are they doing that? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, why are they blocking? Like, why are they set? Okay, what kind of offensive system? Oh, interesting. And you just pick up. There are a lot of different ways to win a point, and you can play a lot of different styles. And so that would be my message to youth players would be, it's great. We have, the NCAA Division I women's system is the most professionalized league we have here in terms of depth of talent. And we have Love, we have Major League Volleyball, we have Athletes Unlimited, we have great pro leagues. But in terms of the professionalization model and the depth of the talent, there's so many players for our girls to look up to in addition to those pro league players here. But I would really implore our youth to watch, Volley World and watch some. They have it in it's literally in your pocket on your phone. You have a cable service in your pocket. Fire up some different countries, fire up some different pro leagues. Watch how different players are moving and playing. Because the only thing that's the same is the net height and the court and the ball. Dimensions. But everything is different with how it's played, and just be more open-minded to explore.
Going into the international with the U23 team, how was that experience for you last year?
It was incredible. It was life-changing. I had the responsibility. It was the first ever U23 team sent to an international competition. There was a uniqueness in that. It was a new opportunity for the USA to put a team in that age division. There were two main populations of players where we were evaluating in the training block for that team, some with collegiate eligibility left and some that had already played first or second year pro. And so getting a group together at different, they're similar in age, but in very different phases of their career and of their lives. And then the other really interesting part of the experience was I had Kayla Banworth and Daniel Scott Aruda as my staff. And I just went through how I grew up, Payless Courts, like I'm a nobody on the south side of Chicago. I'm a gym rat, half the time I run into people in my building and they're like, are you the soccer coach? Like, I was never, I wasn't an All-American. Like I joke, I peaked in high school, like I was Chicago 7 times all area, and I peaked in high school in terms of my own fame. And I'm as average and as they come. Right. And here I'm in charge. I mean, I remember watching Daniel Scott Aruda in '96 in the Olympics. I was 12 watching her play in her first Olympics, which was on U.S. soil. And now I'm taking the U23 national team to an international competition, and she's my assistant. Like, that just does not compute, So there was this level of like, wow, like this is pretty unique. I have these people and Kayla Banworth, 2016 Olympian, and just these people who have played at the highest level and really been able to do it. Like they've been the best in the world, and I have a chance my responsibility was to drive the team and bring back a gold medal while also getting every single player on roster playing experience. And then I have this great partnership opportunity with these two Olympians. And so I very much struggled to put it into words. I have this like big long thing I wrote on Instagram, like as I was like sobbing after the trip where all the emotions were coming down, but I was just really appreciative. It was a life-changing experience. And I'm just so thankful for it.
With the international, right, with the U teams, it's such an interesting concept because it's different than like it's a national team, but it's not like the adult national teams where these
team, right.
where
it's an age group national
yeah
team.
exactly, and it's not where these athletes see each other. They consistently, unless you come right in fresh,
right,
but they consistently play with each other. This is completely different. There's different athletes. Sometimes they play with one another at NTDP and things like that, but was there at any point like the cool view of like seeing them buy into like everyone's separate, they're all on their different kind of paths, but like we all come in because we want to have this goal that we have set in mind to achieve? How was that feeling?
That started from day one, and that's the value of having Kayla and Danny on staff is, they're sitting across, they're listening to me explain the logistics of the week and the organization and some of the systems. And they're hearing from me, hey, we have a responsibility. When you have USA on your chest, and we're one of the best teams in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's a responsibility. You not only have our country and the youth and everybody involved in volleyball watching you, the entire world is coming after you and wants to be you. And so there's a uniqueness to that. And then I have Kayla and Danny sitting right next to me telling stories of their, sharing wisdom of how they prepared and their experience. So again, I had the vision and the roadmap, but they brought I brought the power behind that message, because those were two women who really, I mean, Danielle Scott paved the way, for Kayla's generation, and Kayla's generation is paving the way for this generation. And so there's this continuity of legacy that was also conveyed to the players. And I think they very quickly understood and were brought into that narrative like, hey, this is really important, and how cool it is that all of them had the responsibility on their shoulders for it. And so it was, it was this moment where we communicated, hey, trust the timing of your life. You're here for a reason, and we have a job to do. And connecting them to that message, and then having people who lived it. It, like I said, it was just like, it couldn't have been more perfect in presenting it to them.
If I was ever in that situation, to know that like I have someone on staff that has been in this high level moment that I can ask for advice or what that is, I think that really benefits a lot of our youth, right? Like you kind of mentioned, we kind of mold ourselves over players and stuff, but to get multiple players that have played at the highest level or as close to possible to the highest level is really, really, really beneficial. Coaching was coaching any different for you, coaching the national, the U23 team, than you would your DePaul team?
Well, I had less time. We had a 7-day training block to pick the team. So I had 18 people training, and I had to cut the roster down to 12.
Mm-hmm.
That was really difficult. That was probably the hardest part of the entire experience, because you are in effect ending 6 people's dreams of wearing the jersey in an international competition, at least at that point in time, not forever, right? But that was a whole new level of, that's not just like saying no to a recruit or not offering a recruit. That's like it's a whole different level, right? Of responsibility. But the other thing was, we had to work with logistics. We had to train basically for simplified objectives, because we didn't have time to rehearse as much as maybe some of these other age group national teams do. And so we had to pick and choose, what did we want to be great at over the next 2 weeks, and what were our areas that we were going to focus on. And I picked like a couple things, like 2 or 3 things, and we just hit those ideas over and over and over again. Whereas the DePaul team, there's layers.
Mm-hmm.
You have your off season, then you have your competitive part of your off season, and your preseason. So your ramp can be a little bit more, there can be a longer ramp. But no, I would say I was the same person, the same coach, gave feedback in the same way, gave respect to the players in the same way. We just had to pick and choose to really simplify our ideas. And so we just talked about, things like how we wanted to run our offense or defense, what were some concepts we wanted to really iron out and make sure that we were good at. And then it was just about managing personnel.
So being, you were talking about you coached at Celtic, so you saw youth volleyball, played it yourself, but then also played collegiate, coached a little bit of international. Where do you think the game for the girls' side is heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
The cool part about the women's game is the women's and the men's game right now at the highest levels look very similar, with the one wrinkle of the spin serve on the men's side.
Mm-hmm.
But you're starting to see, if you turn on the highest level women's club teams in the world, the games are looking similar. If you turn on the highest men's teams in the world, the game and the speed and the decision making and how the game is being played are looking very similar. And the specific examples that I'll use there is, more women are spin serving or hybrid serving. More men are float serving in addition to spin and hybrid serving. More women are using back row attack in chorus with front row attack from all positions. They almost have
100%. That's probably one of the biggest things I've
five
noticed.
attackers all the time,
Mm-hmm.
rolling. And the men's game is using more tips, throws, and shots from the women's game. And I had a conversation, Nick McRae, who was on the Long Beach men's side.
Mm-hmm.
This was way back when we were both on the assistant coaches committee. But I remember having a really, really unique conversation with him. This must have been back in 2014, 2013, 2014. And he had called me and he was like, hey, I know we're on the assistant coaches committee. How do you teach, the toolkit, for women? And I think it's going to start to come into the men's. And this was like, 12, 13 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
look where we are. And then I was calling him going, hey, and I worked with Brent Hilliard at the time, who was an Olympian, and and he was trying to involve more back row. And this was 10 years ago, before it was really popular in the women's game, at least in college. But where the games are going, I think what you're going to start to see, and we just saw this, I think Avid Volley posted it, and we haven't received any specific notes from NORCECA, but you're going to see some different rule experimental changes. So whether it's the libero being able to use their
Mm-hmm.
hands, maybe
Yeah.
the libero will serve, maybe there's going to be a 2 libero rule. There's going to be different things that play with the flow of sets and matches. So right now, one of the biggest focuses around the world, because volleyball has become such this, it's starting to become so popular in terms of streaming that more advertisements want to get in
Mm-hmm.
there and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to simplify when stoppages of the match are going to be. They want to keep the action going. So their rules committees are really trying to think about, how can we make this the most exciting game to grow viewership and grow participation and get people that maybe have never experienced the sport in and hooked. Because you and I know, you go see volleyball one time. Terry used to say this all the time. You come to one of our matches, you will come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like going to a live ice hockey game. Like, you can watch it on TV, but you go there live, you're like, these guys are flying.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. Like, you just have a much better appreciation when you're live and you're at the event. So fan experience, fan engagement is a big focus right now. Adjusting the rules of the game to allow more freedom of play is a big focus right now. And so that the rule changes, I mean, we've seen the most impactful one that you're going to see change the game is the rotation rule. And the rule that you can leave rotation on toss of serve
Instead of contact.
but have to be reset by contact. And you're starting to see teams do some really creative things where, as that server serves, which is why I think more men are floating, because you throw that ball to the ceiling and the libero can position himself or herself exactly where
Mm-hmm.
they want that person passing. Whereas with the short float or the juke float, like, there's not as much time to switch on reception. And so attacking still scores the most points in volleyball. And so promoting an in-system opportunity to do that is obviously the goal in either phase, in point score or in reception. But I think the rule changes are going to cause the game to evolve. And I have no idea where it's going to go, because we've never had some of these rule changes. We've always had the rule where you can leave on serve contact. Now you can leave on toss.
Yeah.
So how is that going to change reception? You still have to have reception order. You still have to keep service order. But how is that going to change reception orientation and strategies? And then how is that going to affect play calls that you can start running? That's what I'm curious to see.
So do you think, on the coaches side, like you personally, or other coaches in the country, whether that's youth or collegiate, like, how fast do you think people are going to start adapting?
I think people are trying things in their gym right now.
No.
Anticipating rule changes. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like coaching two different iterations of the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've already drawn a lot of stuff up. Yeah, I think when you get in the volley nerd lab,
Yeah.
you
That's
know? I mean, you're gonna probably be down tonight jotting some stuff down on paper of what type of systems, how would it affect your systems?
because even, like, I mean, even the double rule, right, that got changed this past year.
Yep. Which,
Right.
thank heavens, I love that change, because it allows youth to play more rallies.
And I love seeing the middle just go up and chuck a ball sometimes,
Yeah.
like, and not get called. Like, I think on the youth side, especially, I've experienced where it's so nice it kind of gives the skill set grows, but it also
Yes.
gives the confidence for these
Yes.
players, for
To
these
grow
athletes.
the skill set.
Yeah,
100%.
just to do it, right? Because,
100%.
like,
Yeah.
I'm a person that if you're in the front of the 10-foot line, balls above the pin, use your hands.
Yeah.
Set that puppy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, let's see what happens.
It's a lot easier too to hit off a handset, I think.
Yeah. No.
Than
Yeah.
it is off a bump set.
I definitely think it's how you track the ball,
Totally.
right?
Your timing.
Like your timing,
Yeah.
everything. Like if
you see it from the setter.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like especially, I played men's, of course, so all our liberos that I've ever played with, even if they were before the 10-foot line, I think you were a little bit more common to see a men's libero use their hands more than a female,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now I see that switch where, like, if I get in the gym, you start seeing these girls start chucking up 5-and-5 balls,
Mm-hmm.
and it, like, fire me up. Let's go. Let's see how this works out, right? Let's
Yep.
hit this flat and deep, and let's play this ball out.
And it also it promotes the idea of teaching youth how to rally.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, yes, we are a very technical country. You name it, we have a sports science behind it. But the rest of the world trains the game and allows the people's movement to catch up. And I'm not saying either is right. I think you do need a blend, right? Like any good coach would say, like, you can't just do only one thing or say only one thing to one player, because then you're going to miss half the team, right? But sometimes it's nice to allow the players to learn to play the game and to enjoy playing the game versus the ball stopping, and you got to go. Like right now, there are some sports that are pretty unwatchable outside of volleyball because the game stops too much. I won't mention them because I don't want to create enemies, but the game stops too much. And it's just the game of volleyball, again, if we're really about growth and inclusion and continuing to promote the sport and get new people in of all different abilities, I do like the adjustments of some of the rules because it does allow people to enjoy and engage in the game.
My favorite sport to watch live
Yeah.
is hockey.
Yeah.
Like, I will. You say Chicago Blackhawks,
Yep,
I'm ready
there.
to go.
Yeah, I'm like, when's the game?
I'm
I got
ready
my
to go.
jersey. Yeah.
And it's could I tell you what's actually like you could because you played hockey, but could I?
At a novice level, I'm not a pro hockey coach, but
you still kind of
yeah. But you enjoy it.
Yeah, and like I don't know what's going on, but I'm like, oh,
Yep.
And I do like when you see a little bit of that. You go to these, like, we host the Windy City qualifier, so like as I walk around, there's rallies that are developing and crazy moments.
Yep.
Now you have parents and other players,
Everyone's
and
excited. Shoot, I'll stop. You know? Yeah.
So it's super fun to watch. Going back to the college scene, earlier you're kind of trying to go for the championship push here, right? How does your training now change from 2018 when you first started, right? Is there a shift in how you're starting to approach the training side of these athletes to prepare for these high level matches against Creighton and Marquette and the conference to get a one up on them?
Yeah, so we're in phase 3 of our program rebuild here. So phase 3 is we're just starting to enter that championship chasing phase. And when you think about chasing championships, I mean, everyone's going to sit down and say, "Hey, I want to win a championship," right? I mean, we're all competitors. You lace up the shoes, you play the game to win, right? But there's a big difference with the gears that championship teams can operate in and teams that are building to that space. And so I'll use a good example. For the past couple years, I think I'm starting to get a reputation that I can take a set off of any team that has a single digit number in front of their name, but I can't beat them yet. And it's because that those teams have so much program momentum and the way that they train. You're a function on Friday of who you are Monday through Thursday. Right? And I learned this a lot when I was at San Diego, and we did have one of those single digit numbers in front of our name on the rankings. And we did beat quite a few Power 4 teams. In fact, I think 2016 or 2017, I forget which year, but that team went like 7-0 against the P4. And just the amount of precision, low errors, but also getting to the point where at 20 all, you can gear up. And then the other team responds, and then you can gear up again. And then the other team responds, and you can finish it. Those are things that if you look at, the most extreme is a Texas A&M, for example. After they got through their 5-set first and second rounds, they buzzsawed the tournament. Buzzsaw. I mean, it was incredible to watch them achieve that level of optimal performance over 6 matches. And and then you look at so you come down from that, you look at different conference championship matches of people that are earning the automatic qualifier, the AQ, to get in that tournament. And you not only do they not make a lot of unforced errors, they also are able to gear up and push back multiple times in a set in order to get to end of set winning type situation and moments. And where we are, and we have been right now, we have no problem with the 24-all swing. We haven't had an issue with that in years, because our players are very capable, confident players, and we train at a pretty high level. But what we need to add now, and what we're trying to deepen, is our ability to hold, we call it hold focus, right? But hold the quality with which you play for longer, have less breaks, not in terms of like rest. I give drink breaks. I don't want to start rumors here, but but have less times that the ball dies, and have more times where people are earning good or great points in the gym. And that's the difference. The higher level you chase within your division, conference, whatever, the higher level gym you want to be in as well, people just don't mess up that much. And they're able to hold quality. Their floor is already really high in the quality with which they can play, and the precision with which they can play. They don't miss digs. They don't miss sets. They just don't miss. So the precision of the game is very high. And so Creighton, I'll go back to that example. We got hot. We played them this past year at our place, and nobody had taken a set off them since preseason. I mean, they were rolling. And they have this tradition where when they're on the road, if they sweep teams, they get ice cream. And so, like, our big focus is, like, my biggest thing is, like, you're not getting ice cream. You're not coming to my gym and going out to Sweet Manny B's after. Like, no ice cream for you, right? So it's become, like, a joke until we can eventually, hopefully, like, and there are other, good teams in the league, too. We want to beat everybody, but we beat them in the first set, 26-24. We had an iteration where the first set, we were going back and forth. Both teams were holding really high quality. We kind of knew how they were going to play us, and we played them perfectly. We executed all the things on the scout. The players executed, and we held our game. And we ended up sneaking, the 26-24. And they came out the next 3 sets, and I believe the score every set got lower and lower and lower in terms of the points that they allowed us to score back on them. And there's a different level with championship teams, or teams on that championship path, in their response and how they train, what their floor of training looks like, what their floor of skill set looks like, how long they're able to operate at that floor or above, and the amount of times that they can push back. And, they can do that. And so that's what's changed, is we try to create a gym environment that promotes the idea of higher quality for longer periods of time, and also having that being our floor so we can start pushing back a little bit better. And right now, some we got it. It's like a wet bar of soap in the shower. Sometimes you got it, and other times it squirts right out, and you're just bouncing around, And so we're fighting for that right now, and that's the wrestling match for us as we enter this year. And I'm excited for this group because they had it at Moments last year, but Moments gets you a 15-14 record and 500 record in the Big East. That's what Moments get you. You want to finish in the top 4. You want to be in that championship match. You've got to make that. You got to take Moments, and you got to turn Moments into often, and then often into almost all the time. And that's when you actually start playing volleyball.
There's not a lot of mistakes that are made, but the quality and what's going over the net is pretty the same. Like, it's pretty consistent. And I always like talking about having this range, right? Where, like, in youth volleyball, if I'm in the gym, we first get in and we're like here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
giving teams points and teams are giving you points.
Yes.
And so the range can be massive.
Yes. And then eventually your goal in training is to try to slim that down. You're never going to be straight line, right? You're going to live in this smaller range.
Well, I think Texas A&M pretty much achieved that straight line in those last 2 matches, because they 3-0. I mean, they buzzsawed people, but yeah.
But yeah, and I always talk about like earning points. Like you want to keep the ball alive, but you have to earn.
Yeah. And you not only have to earn, you have to stack in a row,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to stop the other team playing at their best. And that's where you win championships. You know, you don't win championships because people miss their serve,
Yes.
or to just, keep the ball in play. Like it's there are different gears. And we were when I was at San Diego, there was one year, and it was the one year where we had finished runner up to BYU and in the conference, and BYU went on to win a final to win enough to make it to a Final Four, and it was their first Final Four ever. And I remember thinking, like, man, next year they're because they have now, like, I call it like Teflon skin. They have like a skin on them that and sure enough, they got harder to beat the following year. We ended up beating them in 2017, which is the first time I think that they had lost at home in quite a bit of years. But it was really hard. Creighton right now is really hard. Everybody's hard to beat in the Big
Mm-hmm.
East, top five league in the country. All the coaches know what they're doing. They are coaching at a high level. All different styles of volleyball. But, Creighton's won now for 10 years. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to continue to win. The expectation's pretty high, and they have some pretty high levels of responsibility. But they are just able to smell when you're getting hot and to sense when you're getting hot, and they can shut it down almost all of the time. And so that's what we're chasing. We're not chasing the high end. We have the high end. We have the high end. We all have high ends. But it's the amount with which you can touch that high end, and how close the floor of what you do during an average part of the match is close to that high end. That's the difference.
It's a really good way of putting it. I always hear, at least, experienced coaches like yourself will never say it because it's not true. At least I don't believe so either. But like, you know, when I was straight out of college, or even now, kids that are out of college coaching youth volleyball, right? And like the you have such a good realization of the long term, where like you're young, you're naive, you're a little ignorant, right? Ego's in the way because you came from college, you might have been an amazing player, whatever the case may be, and like your goal is just to win, like now.
Yeah.
I was that way.
Yep.
Right. And then
I was that way.
yeah, and you get into the gym and you're like, well, it's not going to happen now, but like, how can we do this? So by the time maybe qualifier season comes up or whatever the case may be, right? By the time we're getting through that second stretch of the season, really honing in on those things that we can actually accomplish, right? Or even for you probably think about it during quads every 4 years or whatever the case may be. And I think that's such an important perspective for coaches to have, because I think unless you're in the top 5% of coaches, right? Division 1, all of Division 1 coaches, and then you have your Division 2 and Division 3 coaches that are really high and compete at a high level, and youth coaches as well. But then there's also those outliers. I believe that they need to realize that long term is so important, mentally, physically, you know. It's interesting that you said I want to touch base on you mentioned that you were so interested on the ACL tears on the women's side.
Yeah, the non-contact.
Yeah,
injury, specifically the ACL. Yeah.
Is there a hack or something that you've discovered that like training wise in volleyball that you use with your girls kind of minimizes their injuries in the gym, whether it's through just tons of reps, in season or maybe off season, not going too hard because their body's more resting than anything?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And there's quite a bit of money now going into research on this, whereas before it was people like me that were taking their own time and dollar and putting it in, right? So I think when you coach any youth, but I have the most experience with women, we hormonally are different. There are different phases of our monthly cycle. We tend to grow our the big motor movers, your glutes, your legs, those develop later in women versus men. Those develop first, earlier. And whereas the finite skill, the finer movements develop in women a lot earlier than they do in men, right? And where our bodies peak. So women, in terms of growth and development, our bodies, the last bone in our body to ossify is our collarbone, and it does it at 30 years old. That's the last bone in our body to fully
Wow.
develop at 30, right?
What a fun fact.
And we get more, like, our fitness lasts, it peaks later and it lasts a little longer, whereas men peak a little earlier and it lasts a little shorter in terms of peak, whatever you're measuring, speed, fitness. I'm not talking about endurance. Endurance is a whole different animal. But in our sports and power sports, the hack is understanding the total picture. You really have to be proactive with training loads across the year. And this is really important right now for coaches because a lot of volleyball players are playing volleyball 12 months out of the year. And you have to understand what part in the play that you serve. Where are you? Are you the high school coach? Are you the club coach? Are you the college coach? Are you the USA NTDP coach? You have to understand where you are in that cycle. And the sooner that understanding takes place, the better the adults in the room can be at protecting our youth sport athletes. Because right now, the growth of the sport and the professionalization of the sport are ahead of the adults in the room protecting the student athletes and the student athlete development. And so, I forget what your original question was, but essentially
It was
the
ACL. Yes, do you use any type of training techniques that you've maybe discovered in your gym?
So number one, awareness. So right now I ran last Friday before Triple Crown, I ran the NCDP U17 development experience. Okay. It was 2.5 hours on a Friday before a 3-day tournament, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And these are arguably your top performers right now relative to their age group. So they're probably on a lot of teams, they're on their best club team, they're on their high school team, they're maybe on the regional all-star team, they're maybe in the NCDP. So I had to have that awareness going in. So how I set up drills and how I have people rotating in those drills has to have balance. I don't want kids on the whole time, but I didn't want people standing off for 20 minutes either, and I'm exaggerating for effect. But you have to have a delicate balance of load management. So what you're doing that day, that moment, and you have to have one eye focused on load accumulation. How is this one day fitting in the greater scope of where they are in their year? And how is that year fitting in the greater scope of where they're at in their 3 to 6 year developmental phase? Right? And then you have to start layering in, is this athlete coming to me with lifting experience? Are they strength trained at all? Yes or no, right? And then you got to start to come in with other things too, mitigating factors, neurodiversity, how athletes respond to environments. There's a holistic picture here. So, in terms of a hack, I did co-author a book that's sold on, I think, the Art of Coaching website, but it's strength. I've done a ton of strength and conditioning books, and I do it in injury prevention. It's a little notebook. We intended it to be kind of small, so you could just put it in your bag.
Is this on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Yeah, you can get it. Yeah, injury prevention for volleyball players, Marie Zidek. Google it; it'll pop right up. I think
Google
it's like
that. Yeah.
$14.
Okay. We're gonna get some.
And I co-authored it with a certified athletic trainer, right? So there's the volleyball perspective, the CSCS perspective, and there's also the medical perspective, right? And if you need some exercises, say you want to hit an extra body part or just do a little, prevention, you got those. So those are your hacks. But I think when it comes from coaching education, and right now what I'm seeing a little bit that's concerning is youth coaches are digging their heels in. High school coaches are digging their heels in versus club coaches. Basketball coaches are digging their heels in versus volleyball coaches. Track and field coaches are digging or volleyball coaches are digging their heels in against track and field coaches. And that's not the direction we want to go. Because I'll tell you what's happening at the college level is student athletes are showing up to us and they're breaking. They're breaking because they're at a level of physical development with their bodies that they can start attacking with real power, which means they're landing with real force. They're not some little thin thing at 15 years old.
Very pliable. And
like basically like Gumby. They have muscle, they have a body, and they are playing explosively on both genders. men and women. But what we're seeing now is a very much an increase of what I would call catastrophic injury. Catastrophic injury requires surgery. There is significant 6 to 12 months of rehab time, and a lot of it is to knees and to backs. We're seeing more back issue in college than ever before. So it's understanding where you fit in the cycle. Two, I think that there's two competing forces right now. There's club directors that understandably have to pay for facilities and pay for their coaches. You want to have high quality coaches, you got to pay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to have high quality programs, you got to pay. You have to guarantee families so many tournaments. But what I'm seeing now relative to maybe when we played, more and more multi-day tournaments are happening back-to-back weekends, and more back-to-back weekends are happening within a month. And I worry about the compression of our youth sports and of our athletes, and they're also playing 12 months of the year, and the high school coach is pissed if they're not in summer ball, right? And I've been at all these different levels of coaching, so I'm by no means calling anybody out. I've been on every part of this cycle, but what this is more of a call of, like, we need to have courageous leadership and really be proactive in, so what's the hack? The hack is getting the adults in the room and coming up with a model. And this is something that we've talked with John at USA Volleyball about. All these heads have been in a room and we're having these conversations of, we have such a good thing going right now in the States with youth volleyball. And we have such a good thing going with the NCAA system. And 348 Division I women's volleyball teams are fully supported to go play. Like, how cool is that? And the men's game is growing at unprecedented levels at the Division II, D3, and NAIA. Like, incredible momentum right now. We have to do our job to make sure we protect the people in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the call to arms. I have a lot of ideas about that, about load accumulation and load management, because it's based in science and child development. And right now we play too much. We don't develop. We play too much on the youth side.
You are filled with, like, I want to see a video of, like, if I can plug you in and just see how your brain just
I know,
like
a little about
spitting
a
out
lot. Yeah.
It is, but it's so interesting and
Yeah.
how you say all of these things, because, like, you say it and it's like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And-
Sorry,
and-
can I add one more thing?
yeah.
I do think, just because I know a lot of youth coaches and youth players are listening to this, and I've been a time-constrained coach. I still am a little bit of a time-constrained coach, but not so much now that I'm coaching in college. I've been the club coach with 2 2-hour practices a week in a facility where you go in the middle of the 13s and the 18s.
Yep.
And you got to be on the court at, whatever your time is, and you're off the court when 120 minutes go. I've lived that life. I know how that is. So I understand people are probably listening to this and they're going, well, that's nice, Marie. You live in a snow globe, you got all the answers. But I will say there are things that coaches and athletes can do. So, like that injury prevention book, those are things, that exercises that athletes can do at home. They can do it on their driveway. They can do it in their garage. They can do it in their backyard. As a coach, also, you have to find ways to build injury prevention into your trainings. So I always like to finish with 5 to 10 minutes of conditioning, because that's when the athletes are fatigued the most. So maybe playing sixes all the way up to practice finish. That's usually when injuries happen, is when fatigue sets in. So we would actually stop our sixes, 10 minutes prior to that hour finishing, and do a volleyball or a body weight circuit, or some type of volleyball type circuit on the court. So there are little things that you can do that will help, but it's going to help, right? We have to solve the problem from a bigger level.
Yeah, I love that. I think we definitely, as just sports in general, like, we are talking about volleyball, but, like, just across every
it's
sport.
The professionalization
Yes.
of youth sports.
Yes,
right?
right.
Which is, we're unique in our sports systems, that sport here in the States is privatized, right? Because we live in a capitalist society, and whereas sport around the world is a little bit more based in community, but there's not privatized companies or people running it. So there's pros and cons to both systems. I mean, people come here from overseas and they think our gym is like the Super Bowl gym, because they just they don't have the facility and infrastructure, right? So there's pros and cons, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that perspective, just sports in general and athletes, I think we just need to make sure and I think it starts from the top, right? Like, I love that you said you guys are talking with John to figure out like a pathway to kind of get this thing going where like we have to protect our athletes. We do. There are way too many instances, when I played, injuries happened, and before my time, and now injuries are happening. Almost I feel like every other week you'll see some. I go to Windy City Power League, and I'll see a team one weekend, and then I'll see the team 2 weeks later, and a girl or two aren't on the team, or they're on the bench because they got injured,
Yeah.
or whatever.
And to be clear, we're talking about soft tissue injuries.
Yes.
We're not talking about obviously ankle sprains are going to be a
Yes.
thing. You're going to
Yes.
break your fingers.
Yep.
That's kind of how
Yeah.
volleyball goes. You're going to get some floor burns. You're going to probably have a contusion because you smacked your elbow on the ground. But I'm talking about like back issues, soft tissue things, back issues. Knee issues, where fatigue builds up and now you've torn a ligament, or you have a stress fracture, or you've broken a bone in your foot, or you have some disc issues that's built up over time. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
We have to mitigate those.
I absolutely agree. I think everyone does, and I definitely go grab that book to try to figure out and read some ways to kind of lower those chances. I absolutely love that. I always talk about with coaches. I always talk about check boxes. You hit some really cool check boxes. What are some boxes that are not checked that you really want to achieve as a coach in your career?
I think the most obvious one that comes to mind when you ask that question is I wanna finish what I started here at DePaul. I want to put a banner on that wall. I want to do something really special for the university, for the community, for the Chicago volleyball community, and also for every person out there that's chasing a sport dream and has significant obstacle and constraint in their way. And I want to do it the right way. I want to do it where there's integrity all across the process, where there's an appreciation for the student athlete, where there's an understanding of the role that chasing championships fits in their life's narrative, not only hanging the banner, but who do they become? Who do they need to become to actually physically, mentally, and emotionally be able to do that? And how does that person now serve them for the rest of their lives and empower them to go out into the world and feel like that they can tackle anything? That's it right now. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I'm working 24/7 for that goal. And then that's not the floor, right? The floor is not only hanging a banner, it's the next obstacle in our way. It's our next checks box. And in order to do that, we actually have to get back to the Big East tournament. We got to get through a semifinal. We got to find a way to get through a semifinal, and then we got to find a way to win a final. So we have some steps to go. But after establishing ourselves and breaking through that level, we want to be an NCAA volleyball team. We want to be one of those 64 teams that plays postseason volleyball. And we want to do that year to year, and then we want to see how far we can go in that tournament. I think, Creighton and Marquette have gone the furthest, the most recent. St. John's was in a Sweet 16 back in 2006-07. There have been some really high-level teams in the Big East, and even the old Big East Pitt used to be in the Big East. Louisville used to be in the Big East. Those have been repeating Final Four teams. So there's no reason that we can't build to that. But now we're talking, decades of investment. It takes time to do those things. But yeah, that's the main goal right now. And as we hit each phase, the goal for myself would be to stay anchored in doing it with integrity and doing it with a person-centered model.
Very respectable of you to even say that. I feel like, I don't know any, but there's probably some shortcuts that some people take as a coach. What is some type of advice that you would give to the youth volleyball player, whether that's playing, whether that's trying to get recruited, whether that's whatever the case may be? What's one thing that, as you all these years of knowledge in your visual library in your head, something that you can a nice gold nugget or a few gold nuggets to these kids?
Find ways to strength train and take care of your body, because volleyball takes a long time to get good at. If you turn on the Olympics, they're in their late 20s, early 30s, most players. There's an occasional exception to that rule, but that is one of one. those are unicorns. And you need to be able, volleyball is it's a very violent sport. It's a very violent sport in a non-contact sense. It's not physical violence, but it's a very violent sport for the body. And if you want a chance to become good at volleyball, it takes a long time to get good at volleyball, and then even longer to become great. And availability is your best ability. So really, that would be my biggest advice right now to youth players. Number one is to respect their body and respect what they're asking their body to do, and lift weights, strength and condition, do injury prevention. Like, that stuff goes a long way because we don't have as many multi-sport athletes. So when you're not a multi-sport athlete, you're not getting built-in rest. You're not getting built-in strength and conditioning by moving your body in different ways. So now you have to add it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's like, oh, another thing. Parents are probably listening to this and they're being like, yeah, Marie, what the heck, man, you know? But it's your health, you know, and if you don't take care of your body, where will you live? You can't go anywhere.
No, yeah.
So that would be number one. Number two would be to find ways to watch the sport in this country and outside of this country. Just find ways to go, you know, watch a college match, you know, go on YouTube. You know, I'm not asking anyone to buy a 10th streaming service or anything. But get on the YouTubes, look up different countries around the world of how they're training and playing volleyball, and just continue to steal ideas from other people and how they're playing. And then number three, don't lose sight as you're kind of stealing ideas and opening your mind to learning how to play differently. You still have a game that you're developing that you should be proud of, you know, and be proud of the way that you play too. Don't be stuck in it as my way is the best and I figured it out. You have never arrived, by the way, as a player. Just because you get a college scholarship or you're in college, or just because you get an invite to an age group national team, or just because you have never arrived. You have to continue to improve and add to your game no matter what gym you are in. It's not like, okay, well, I'm watching the national team. Oh, they're good. It's like, yeah, but it's good relative to great and good on the other side of the net too. So really stay anchored in enjoying the development process would be the third. Yeah.
You have the opportunities, you have been doing art of coaching clinics. Talk us about some of those trainings that go into that. Your thought, you know, what you give to the athletes that are there and to the coaches that look at that.
Well, first off, it's an opportunity to be in the same room with some coaching legends, you know, and yes, I have experience. I have 19 years of experience. You're going to get a chance to talk to coaches and hear from coaches that have 4 or 5 decades of experience. And certainly Russ and Terry have done it at the highest level. What the art of coaching clinics offer is an opportunity to get in person. Because remember, the art of coaching, the premise and the motivation behind that is it's an art. There's no one way that's right and one way that's wrong. Everyone can do it a little bit differently, and it's about learning maybe something that you're not doing or something that could evolve what you're doing. There's an art to it. Everything can be done a little differently, right? So it's an opportunity to get in. They're going to get opportunities to see on-court demonstrations of how different coaches teach different skill sets. I'm going to present on how to upgrade the basic drills that I know every coach in the country does. For example, an arm warm-up. Most coaches, I think, do some type of arm warm-up. Most coaches have some type of ball control warm-up. So I'm going to present on how to evolve and elevate the amount of contacts that you can get. So in a 2-hour practice, you get 4 hours of contacts. There's going to be coaches there talking about systems. There's going to be classroom sessions. There's going to be, and an opportunity to meet people and collaborate and share stories. And that's where the beauty of these clinics lies, is I want to pick your brain. I want to hear, you know, hey, you had a great year this year. Talk me through it. Hey, you had a tough year. Talk me through. What did you learn? What do you wish you did differently? Oh, wow. That's actually, I'm glad you told me that, because now I'm more mindful of this. So it's an opportunity. And this is what makes the volleyball community so great, is we're still grassroots. Nobody's too big, you know, for the room to come in and talk to other coaches. Every coach there, independent of level, has value, has something to provide, that has a reason why they're doing things a certain way. and we share ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's a phenomenal collaborative experience, and you get to talk to some people who've been through some things and developed and built programs and really gained some critical thinking skills.
How many Art of Coaching clinics have you done in total?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to fact check this, but I think it's got to be close to 5 or 6 at this point. When I was at Oregon State in 2007, this was the brainchild that Terry and Mark Barnard and Russ and John Dunning would meet about. And I was a GA in 2007 when this was just an idea. So I had an opportunity to be at the table. And remember, I was a GA. So what was I doing? I was taking meeting notes, going back to how we started this conversation. But I got a chance to be at that table of a lot of these iterations of ideas being born. And it was really, it was really an opportunity to see the coaches at the highest level. Because Mark Barnard at the time, he had been an Australian national team coach. You have Terry Liskevich, USA national team coach. And here they are around a round table. Russ, obviously, Russ and John, multiple national championships. Here they are, these coaches who have incredible amounts of success, and they're talking about how can they give back to the coaching community. And I saw what an incredible impression, as a 20-something looking to find my way in this very egotistical industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to put something together, and that's essentially what it is. It's coaching education by coaches for coaches.
That's awesome. We are so looking forward to that clinic when you guys present. It's gonna be a good one. Super glad that you were able to come. Any final messages, athletes, shout outs to mentors, to your team at DePaul, to whoever?
I'll tell you, what I've put together and what DePaul has put together for this fall, I would be waiting for our schedule drop. We're going to have some first ever type of marquee matches in Chicago happening this fall that I guarantee everybody's going to want to be a part of. So stay tuned. It's going to be around Labor Day weekend. I can't divulge any more there because certain things have to be, completed. But I will tell you, Labor Day weekend in Chicago, don't make plans because Friday through Monday, you're going to want to get to some volleyball events.
We're signed up at DePaul. I love that.
Awesome.
Marie, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that you were able to come and spend your time with us and give some good insight to our members about your program and coaching and athletes and the whole package. Thank you again. Couldn't be more than happy to have you, and looking forward to seeing you at the Art of Coaching Clinic that's coming in May.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.